Sometimes we try to fix the wrong things, is what Doña Mariela, my neighbor, told me when she saw Lucia leaving the workshop for the third time that week. The bicycle had been ready since the first visit, but we kept inventing small defects to justify our meetings. It was strange. I, Diego, 33 years old, have always been the silent mechanic people sought when they wanted to solve practical problems, not emotional ones. But there was something in the eyes of that 48-year-old woman that made my tools seem insufficient. How do you fix a story that started broken 20 years ago when she had to give up a son for adoption? Between screws and memories, we discovered that some repairs require more than technical skill. They require courage. If you've ever lived a love story that began in a completely unexpected way, share this video with someone special. Sometimes it's in the stories of others that we find the courage to write our own. I've never been good with words. I prefer the metallic sound of tools, the smell of new grease, the simple mystery of a broken gear. Here in San Cristobal, between stone alleys and mountains that seem to touch the sky, I found my place, a small workshop where I fix practically everything people bring me. I live alone in an apartment above the workshop. Every day I wake up at 6, make coffee that's too strong, as my grandmother taught me before she passed, and go down to organize my tools. It's almost a ritual. The neighbors say I'm too young for so much routine, that at 33 I should be enjoying life, but I found a different kind of peace here, among metals and mechanisms that make sense. I have my reasons for preferring solitude. I grew up watching my parents in a constant dance of fights and reconciliations, a cycle that taught me that love is too complicated. Maybe that's why I chose to be a mechanic. There's a clear logic to fixing things. If something is broken, you identify the problem, replace the part, and you're done. With feelings, it's not that simple. Doña Mariela, my 70-year-old neighbor, who has self-proclaimed herself my unofficial advisor, always says I built a workshop to fix the world, but I put my heart on a shelf that's too high. Diego, she says as she brings me tamales on Thursday afternoons. You have hands that fix, but eyes that are searching for something tools can't reach. The people in town know me as the silent mechanic. They bring their bicycles, broken appliances, and sometimes they stay and tell their stories while I work. I listen more than I talk. It's curious how people feel comfortable sharing secrets with someone who is too busy tightening screws to judge their choices. I never imagined that my life, so organized, so precisely adjusted like a Swiss watch, could be completely thrown off by a single customer. Much less because of a simple electric bicycle that, to be honest, didn't need that much repair. But it turns out that some people have a gift for messing up our best calibrated gears. And Lucia? Well, she wasn't just another customer with something broken to fix. It was a Tuesday when she appeared. The fine rain typical of San Cristobal gave everything that melancholic glow that only mountain towns know. I was adjusting the brake on a motorcycle when I heard the bell on the door, the one Doña Mariela insisted I install, saying that a workshop without a bell is like coffee without aroma. Lucia walked in, pushing an old electric bicycle, a model I hadn't seen in years. But it wasn't the equipment that caught my attention. It was the way she occupied the space, as if every movement were part of a poem she was still writing. Grey hair, elegantly disheveled by the drizzle, reading glasses hanging from a silver chain, and a look that seemed to carry too many stories for one afternoon. They say you can fix anything, she said, her voice with that tone of someone looking for more than just a mechanical service. I dropped the motorcycle I was working on, something I never do, and approached. The bicycle had some obvious problems, a dead battery, an oxidized circuit, worn-out brakes. But Lucia looked at it as if it were a treasure. It was a gift from my father, she explained without my asking. For the last few years, it's just been sitting on the porch, collecting memories and rust. There was something in the way she touched the handlebars, as if caressing not just the metal, but also the time that had passed. When our hands accidentally met while examining the battery compartment, I felt the kind of electricity that no mechanic's manual can explain. She smiled, a restrained smile, but one that lit up the entire workshop. "How long will it take?" she asked. "A few days," I replied, even though I knew I could fix it all in a few hours. Before she left a card with her number. "To let you know when it's ready," she said. But her eyes suggested other conversations, other possibilities. I watched her leave, her silhouette blending into the afternoon mist as the doorbell rang one last time. That night, for the first time in years, I couldn't concentrate on my work. My hands knew every tool, every procedure, but my mind wandered to the mystery of this woman who seemed to carry enough stories to fill all the shelves in my workshop. A week had passed since I fixed the bicycle. Lucia hadn't come to pick it up. The card with her number burned in my pocket like an unasked question. I found myself looking out the workshop window more often than I'd like to admit, hoping to see her silhouette crossing the cobblestone street. Doña Mariela, with her usual invasive wisdom, caught me cleaning the bicycle for the third time. "When the mechanic cleans a part too much, it's not the part he wants to polish," she said, leaving that all-knowing smile hanging in the air. I tried to explain it was just professional care, but even the tools on the wall seemed to laugh at my excuse. It was on a cloudy Thursday that she reappeared. Unlike the first time, her eyes carried a private storm. "Sorry for disappearing," she murmured, her voice trembling like a poorly tuned guitar string. She sat on the bench near the counter, the one I use for waiting customers, but she looked like she was holding herself together to keep from falling apart. "The past sometimes comes back without asking for permission," she said, distractedly spinning a wrench between her fingers. "Some people think 20 years is enough time for certain choices to heal." Her hands were shaking now, and it wasn't from the mountain cold coming in through the door. "I made coffee." That sane, overly strong coffee my grandmother taught me to make, and for the first time since I opened the workshop, I closed the door early. Not because of the rain that was starting outside, but because of the storm I saw in her eyes. Lucia talked for hours. About a son she had to give up. About decisions that haunt like ghosts. About letters never sent and birthdays counted in silence. As she spoke, I adjusted small details on the bicycle. Not because it needed it, but because my hands needed something to do with all the emotion overflowing in the workshop. "He found me, Diego," she finally said, her voice breaking like a part under too much pressure. "My son found me." The silence that followed was as heavy as the oldest tools in the shop. For the first time, I understood that there were breaks my tools couldn't fix. When she stood up to leave, the rain had already stopped. "I'll be back for the bike tomorrow," she promised, but we both knew it wasn't the bike she would be back for. Some people come into our lives like unexpected parts, changing the entire mechanism we thought we knew so well. I never thought my workshop would become a meeting point for family dramas, but on a Saturday morning, as I was adjusting the handlebars of Lucia's bicycle, he appeared. Santiago, 20 years of absence compressed into a young man, with restless eyes and nervous hands. "Does my mother work here?" he asked, not knowing that question carried the weight of 2 decades. I recognized his eyes immediately. They had the same depth as Lucia's, that way of looking that seems to search for something beyond the surface. Before I could answer, I heard the sound of hurried heels on the pavement. It was Rebecca, Lucia's other child, the one who stayed, the one who carried the silence of a sister who never knew she had a brother. "What do you want here?" Rebecca shot out, her voice cutting the air like metal against metal. 20 years have passed and now you just show up. For what? Santiago remained silent, his hands clutching his backpack as if it could protect him from the words ricocheting around the workshop. I found myself in the middle of an emotional minefield, among tools that were useless for fixing what was broken there. Rebecca, with her 25 years of shared history with her mother, stared at her brother as if he were a defective part in a previously functional mechanism. "Mum was finally doing okay," she said, her voice trembling. "You don't have that right." That's when Lucia appeared at the door, frozen as if she'd seen a ghost, and in a way, she had. Time seemed to stop in the workshop. Even the old ceiling fan seemed to hold its breath. "My children," she whispered, the word children coming out like a long-held confession. Santiago took a step forward, but Rebecca stood between them. "We are not your children," she corrected. "I am your daughter. He is a story you chose not to tell." The air grew heavy with unsaid words, with 20 years of unanswered questions. Lucia looked at me, her eyes pleading for help to fix something that tools can't reach. For the first time since I opened the workshop, I felt completely useless. How do you fix hearts broken in different directions? How do you adjust for lost time? How do you calibrate shattered expectations? The tension in the workshop was palpable, as thick as old oil. 3 people connected by blood, separated by old choices, all seeking different repairs for the same broken story. It was raining when he stormed into my workshop, bringing with him a storm worse than the one outside. Esteban, Lucia's ex-husband, a man who wore authority like a tool of intimidation. "Where is she?" he demanded, his voice echoing off the walls like an unwelcome thunderclap. I knew men like him, the kind who confuse possession with love, who use the past as a weapon. His hands, unlike mine, marked by grease and honest work, were too clean, but they carried a restrained violence that turned my stomach. "You can't stop me from seeing her," he continued, fiddling with my tools without permission. "She's my woman." The present tense of the verb revealed that to him, the divorce was just a meaningless piece of paper. At that moment, Lucia entered the workshop, and I saw all the color drain from her face. "What are you doing here, Esteban?" Her voice trembled, but there was a new resistance in it, different from the woman I met weeks ago. Santiago and Rebecca, who were at the corner cafe, came running when they saw his car parked outside. "I came to get what's mine," he answered, advancing towards her. That's when something inside me snapped, like a gear finding its place. I put myself between them, my grease-stained hands contrasting with his immaculate suit. "The workshop is closed," I said, my voice firmer than it had ever been. But Esteban laughed, the kind of laugh that makes the air heavy. "The mechanic's a bodyguard now. Don't meddle where you're not wanted, kid." It was Rebecca who exploded first. "You have no power over her anymore." Santiago, even without knowing the whole story, stood by his sister's side. It was the first time I saw them united, like parts that were finally fitting together. Lucia began to shake, but not from fear, from anger. "It's over, Esteban. It's been over for years. You can no longer control my life, my choices, my children." Her voice grew with each word, filling the workshop with a force that made even the tools vibrate. The ex-husband lunged forward, knocking over a tray of tools. The metallic crash was deafening, but not louder than the 2-decade-long repressed scream that Lucia finally released. "Enough." In that moment, I realized that some confrontations need to happen so that broken things can finally be fixed. Lucia was no longer the woman who walked into my workshop with a rusty bicycle. There, among fallen wrenches and Esteban's stunned gaze, she was rebuilding herself. I spent the whole night in the workshop after Esteban left, organizing tools that didn't need organizing. Every part I picked up made me question my place in this story. It was easy to fix broken things. That's what I did for a living. But people? People are infinitely more complex than any mechanism. Doña Mariela showed up in the morning with coffee and that look that sees through any excuse. "You've been arranging those tools since yesterday, mijo," she said, sitting on the bench near the counter. "But it's not them that need ordering, is it?" She was right. I was used to my organized life. As predictable as the swing of a pendulum. Lucia had arrived like an earthquake, bringing with her 2 children full of resentment and a toxic ex-husband. It was more drama than I had planned for a lifetime. I found myself looking at her bicycle, now completely restored. I had put so much care into every detail, as if fixing it could somehow fix its owner too. What an illusion. Some breaks go far beyond what my tools can reach. That's when Lucia appeared, her eyes still carrying the storm from the night before. "You must be thinking I'm too complicated," she said, a sad smile playing on her lips. "And you're right. I'm a complete mess. I looked at my hands, greasy as always. You know, I began, surprised by my own words. I've spent my whole life fixing broken things, but for the first time, I've understood that some things don't need to be fixed. They need to be accepted, understood. She came closer, touching a wrench distractedly. You don't have to stay, Diego. You don't have to get involved in all this mess that is my life. It was then that I realized it wasn't a choice between running away or staying. It was a choice between continuing to be the mechanic who only fixes things, or becoming someone who accepts that not everything needs fixing. I'm not here to fix you, Lucia, I said, finally meeting her gaze. I'm not your personal mechanic. I just want to walk beside you, even if the path is full of loose parts, she cried. Not the cry of something broken, but the cry of someone who finally finds someone who doesn't demand she be whole to be loved. Are you sure? She asked, her voice smaller than I had ever heard it. I have 2 children trying to reconnect, a problematic ex-husband, and more baggage than any bicycle can carry. I smiled, taking her hand. Then we're going to need a stronger bicycle. The afternoon sun painted the colonial walls of San Cristobal in shades of orange as we went out for our first ride together. I had tuned up an old bicycle for myself, not as elegant as hers, but good enough to accompany her through the cobblestone streets. Lucia rode with a freedom I had never seen before. Her grey hair danced in the wind, and she laughed, a genuine laugh that made the wrinkles around her eyes look like marks of well-lived stories, not suffering. Did you know I hadn't ridden a bike in over 20 years? She told me as we rested in a plaza. After I gave Santiago up for adoption, I put the bike away. It was as if I had lost the right to feel that freedom. Her voice no longer carried that heavy guilt. It was more like an acknowledgement of a time left behind. That's when we saw Santiago and Rebecca sitting at a cafe across the street. They saw us too. There was a moment of hesitation, like gears that are still learning to turn together. Rebecca was the first to wave, a small gesture, but one that carried tons of forgiveness in the making. They're trying, Lucia whispered, her eyes welling up. Yesterday, Rebecca showed Santiago old photos. Said he has the same smile I had at 20. She gripped the bicycle's handlebars, as if she needed to hold on to keep from overflowing with emotion. We rode to the viewpoint, where the entire city unfolded below us like a perfectly assembled puzzle. From there, we saw Doña Maria on her balcony, waving with that smile of someone who always knew that some stories just need the right time to happen. Diego, Lucia called, her voice mixed with the mountain wind. Thank you for not trying to fix me. She smiled, and in that smile, I saw all the pieces falling into place. Not because they were fixed, but because they had found their right place. From a distance, I noticed Santiago watching us. He had that look of someone who is learning to accept that some stories can have different beginnings. Rebecca appeared beside him, offering a coffee, and for the first time, I saw them talking without the weight of the past between them. You know, Lucia said, adjusting her bike seat, sometimes you have to leave things a little broken to find out they work perfectly just the way they are. The sun was beginning to set, tainting the sky with colours that no workshop could reproduce. In that moment, I understood that there were repairs that happened naturally, like time healing wounds, or like 2 siblings slowly learning to be a family. Today, as I clean my workshop at the end of the day, I realize the way I look at broken things has changed. Lucia's bicycle is still here, not because it needs fixing, but because she likes to stop by for coffee after she finishes her literature classes at the local school. The tools are still the same, organized on the walls as they have always been, but now they tell me different stories. The wrench I used to adjust her bicycle's handlebars that first day. The pliers I held tightly when Esteban invaded this space. The old flashlight that illuminated so many late-night conversations about difficult pasts and uncertain futures. Santiago shows up sometimes, curious about mechanics. His hands, once nervous, are now learning the language of gears. Rebecca still watches him with a mix of caution and hope, but the sharp tension in the air is gone. It's strange, she told me the other day, how you can spend so much time running from something that, in the end, was exactly what was missing. Donna Mariela still grins her malice and her wisdom on Thursday afternoons. See? She says with that familiar smile. Sometimes we think we're fixing bicycles, but we're actually learning to fix life. She's right, as she always has been. Lucia, you spend years learning to fix things, only to discover that the real fixing happens when you accept that not everything needs to be fixed. And you know what? That's okay. Some stories don't need an ending. They just need to keep being written, day after day, ride after ride, repair after repair. As Lucia says, while adjusting her helmet for another ride, sometimes you fix a wheel and end up spinning your heart.